Welcome to the Startup Grind.
We're here to talk to Chris Reed from Black Marketing. Chris is visiting us from Singapore. So, Chris, let's talk about you. Let's get your story. So, you're not from Singapore. How did you end up in Singapore?
Well, I hate the weather in the UK.
All right.
The UK, I hate the weather in the UK is like this. So it's drizzly, it's damp. It's basically, I remember the day in July it was when I looked out the window and it was all grey and drizzly, and it was 2008, and it was that whole great financial crisis side of things, and I run a marketing business there. I was an entrepreneur. I thought, I need some sun, I need some light, I need to go somewhere where I can be an entrepreneur and experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And Asia was the most obvious place to come. So I looked at both Hong Kong and Singapore, and it just so happens that Singapore was the one that I eventually chose because of circumstances and because of LinkedIn as well. I reached out to people using LinkedIn, and people actually pointed in the direction of Singapore more than they did in Hong Kong at the time. So that's where the potential, that's where the germ of the idea came from.
And you had a wife and kids at this time, right?
No, none of those kind of things. I had ex-wives, and I can't say ex-kids because there's obviously still kids with you.
So you didn't have to convince anybody to move with you?
No, not at all. It's very much about, I ran my own business in the UK. We had sold it to a bigger company, and they basically had run out of money. So we eventually bought back the company, and then we basically were creating the business, building momentum, and then the great financial crisis came in, and the first thing that goes obviously is marketing spend.
Yep.
Particularly what we were doing, very, very niche marketing, it was partnership marketing. So that convinced me I needed to be an entrepreneur somewhere else. And actually being in London was quite interesting, because being in London, basically entrepreneurs and marketing people just look at London. And that's it. Basically, London might look at the Greater London, might look at England. If you really look at the United Kingdom, they never look at Europe. Whereas over here, the first thing that somebody said to me is basically, you got a regional job, your job is to focus on the whole of the Asia Pacific. I'm going, my God, the whole of Asia Pacific? Yeah, including Japan and China and India and Indonesia and Malaysia and Australia. I'm going, oh my God, the mentality was just completely different. And that's what really was so refreshing, because people don't look at one country over here.
So you were free, you had no ties, you were able to move over here to Asia. You thought Singapore is going to be a great place, I'm going to Singapore.
Yep.
But did you have a job when you moved to Singapore, or was it just, hey, I'm going to move to Singapore?
I literally was commuting between my old job, as in my company in the UK, which I'd handed over to an MD, but I was still doing new business development, and I was actually using LinkedIn over here to find a job over here. So I had no job when I came over to Asia. So I basically just threw the dice. And say, okay, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. But using, faith, using the fact that I still had this role in the UK, where, but I knew it was going to come to an end between 3 and 4 months' time. I knew I needed to basically create something and make something happen over in Asia. So I networked like mad, as you can imagine, as you'll be doing, as lots of people do here. You just keep on networking until something basically clicks. And this, don't forget, this is 2009, where you came over here. It's like, what recession? What great financial crisis? That didn't really happen over here. Whereas in the UK, it was all doom and gloom and austerity. And in America, it was all doom and gloom and banks going under. Over here, it's like the banks are posting record profits, and there was a recession for like a month. Sometime in 2008, it was like, but then it was finished and that was over. And that's the amazing thing about places like Singapore and Hong Kong, is they seem very, very resilient.
So you landed in Hong Kong. How long was it before, Singapore. You landed in Singapore. I'm stuck on Hong Kong. You landed in Singapore. How long was it before you came up with the idea to start the business that you have now? And was that the first idea that you have?
No, because it took me some time to obviously get acclimatized to the culture. It took me time to get used to people saying yes when they meant no. It took me time to that whole, I had a job here, and for the first 6 months I went to meetings, and I came back from the meetings and went, got another one, fantastic, amazing, got another one. And 6 months later I'm going, I'm sure some of these deals must have come in by now. It's like, none of these deals have come in at all. And someone had to explain to me, they say yes to you, but they mean no, but they just don't want to say yes. And it's like, I don't want to say no. It's like, okay, I'm going to get my head around this. But it was because I started using LinkedIn in this role. So I found my first 3 jobs using LinkedIn. So I reached out to people in the UK and said, do you know people in Singapore? They said, yes, go and talk to this person, go and talk to this person. And they said, yes, I'll have a cup of coffee with you, because Singapore's that kind of place like Hong Kong is. People say yes. It's very easy to have a cup of coffee with someone, whereas in London, people would say, oh, maybe in 6 months' time, if you're lucky and if the weather's right. Because obviously it's very cold, like this. People aren't particularly, they don't want to go outside and actually network, they want to go home, don't want to go out. Whereas in Singapore, they actually do say yes 24/7, 7 days a week. They like going out, and they like meeting new people. And because you have 1 in 3 people there who are expats anyway, there's a mentality there where people do take a risk to actually meet you. So I found these jobs which weren't advertised through people I met on LinkedIn. And then the bigger role I had was the regional partnerships director, where I had to generate new business. And to generate new business, people said to me, here's a database. So I had this amazing database for my team. So I mailed them all out, and they bounced all the way back. And it's like, okay, why are they bouncing back? Oh, people here change jobs all the time. So, oh, okay. Another cultural thing, people change jobs on a regular basis. Okay, start using LinkedIn. And with LinkedIn, people keep their contact details up to date.
Right.
Because it tends to be their personal details. So then we started winning business using LinkedIn. Not just Singapore business, but regional business from China, with big brands, big multinationals. But it's all through LinkedIn, all through connecting people on LinkedIn. And then my company said to me, well, why don't we do some training? Tell other people how you actually use LinkedIn to generate this business. So I started doing training in places like Dubai and the UK and Australia, and even the United States, about how you use LinkedIn for what is now known as social selling. At the time, it was just, we're using this HR database for selling, because my philosophy was, if you can find a CMO for HR, you can find a CMO for new business. And it seemed to work. And then a couple of years went by, and I started enhancing my personal profile, and people kept on coming up to me and saying, can you do my profile for me? And I will pay you. And I went, dum. That's when it happened. So when I became permanent resident in the UK, in Singapore, it's then easy to set your own business up. And then that was the spark where I actually went for it there and then. Plus the fact I had 2 companies who did not pay me. So I had 2 jobs who didn't pay me. And I went, okay, I can't have this happen anymore. I can't rely on other people to basically pay me. I will create my own way of actually making sure that people pay me. I have my own responsibility to make sure that people are going to pay me. And that's by being an entrepreneur and using the LinkedIn. And that's where the black marketing came from.
Okay. So it's a very natural, organic process. I mean, you kind of stumbled into it. At what point did you take that leap and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this business?
It was during the second job I'd had, where basically the company did not pay me. So at that point, I was like running out of money. I'd sold my flat in the UK to basically finance myself. And at that point I went, okay. And then I started basically, when I quit, because I'd had enough. I said, look, I can't work for nothing anymore. This just can't go on.
Got nothing to lose.
Got nothing to lose. I've got to go for it here. And I had people coming to me all the time then saying, I will do my LinkedIn for me. And then when I started reaching out to people, when I left that particular role, and then that was like the floodgates then opened. People go, yeah, fantastic. I love your profile. Will you do my profile? And then people started saying, didn't realize you could do this on LinkedIn, didn't realize you could generate leads on LinkedIn, didn't realize you could be a thought leader on LinkedIn, didn't realize you could do employer branding on LinkedIn. And that's when we became profitable instantly. During the first year, we turned over like $500,000, made $250,000 profits, and that was just by literally organic growth and by talking to lots and lots of people.
So who was the first employee that you hired after yourself?
That's a very good question. The first employee actually took, I think, 9 months. So in September of 2014 was the first employee, and she was part-time. And so that was the stage where I had so many clients, I couldn't do both the account management and the blog writing and the new business and my own new business at the same time. It was like, I can't do everything here, because every time I did new business, I was thinking, I should be working on someone's profile.
Right.
So that was the point where I needed to employ someone. And then that was the first person. Then we took a big leap in January 2015 by employing 5 people and 6 people. Now we're up to 21 people in Singapore, which is where our regional hub is. But they service clients across the entire world. They service clients from Europe, from the United States, from Australia, from China, from Hong Kong, from Shanghai. So that's really where the hub is. That's where the center of excellence is. That's where we do all the training for the team. That's where the client management's done. That's where the editorial team is. And that's where now you start getting serious. Like you get over 10 people, you start getting really serious, because then you look at the wage bill each month. You go, oh my God, I need to generate this much money to pay this many people every single month.
Yeah. So 2015 was a big year for you. I mean, that was big growth. What are most of these people doing? Are they writers? Are they social media experts? What type of people are you employing?
We tend to employ, they're all millennials. They're all Singaporean bar one or two. They're all basically very good writers. They all understand social media because they're all millennials. And they're all female millennials, bar 2. So they really get the whole, sharing content, how you're engaging. So we've had to adapt for example, our philosophy in terms of recruiting. and what our workplace strategy as well. So we have very flexible working, so people can come in when they want, they can leave when they want. All we ask is they actually deliver for our clients. So it means I get emails at 3 o'clock in the morning with a blog that I need to approve, for example, because someone feels inspired with a glass of wine at 4 o'clock, at 2 o'clock in the morning. They've written a fantastic blog, but then they're not going to come in at 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. But that's fine, because they're happy, I'm happy, and the client's happy. As long as the clients are happy, that's all we care about. So they're doing writing, so the editorial team, they're doing account management, they're doing basically new business, they're managing people's connections, they're basically enhancing the profile, they're putting keywords in, they're basically using all the things that LinkedIn tell you to do that most people do not do.
How many customers do you have roughly?
We have about 100 customers at the moment, but it's going up all the time. One of the reasons I'm here in Hong Kong is because we're winning lots more business in Hong Kong. So we're finding that particularly expats who are entrepreneurs of SMEs become clients. As soon as we meet people, as soon as we see people, they realize the power, they see the power of LinkedIn, and they realize what they're actually missing out on, what they can actually do using LinkedIn. So as soon as we meet people and talk to people about it, that's when they become a client. And ironically, half our clients are marketing agencies of some kind, because marketing agencies are the worst kind of people to actually market themselves. It's kind of completely ironic.
And you and I have talked about this. I run a marketing agency, and I came to Chris and I was like, I don't have time to do this myself, and this is what we do, but I don't have time to do it.
We do PR for PR agencies, we do content for content agencies, we do social for social agencies, we do communications for communications agencies. Because they do it for clients, and they're very good at doing it, but they're not very good at doing it for themselves.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the client always takes priority, right?
Completely. And they're paying for it. No one pays you to do your own marketing, do they? So.
Right, exactly. So, so 2016, is this looking like another good year? How much are you going to grow this year?
Well, we're going to IPO this year. We're going to IPO the Singapore office in this year.
Really?
Yes, on the Swedish NASDAQ, the first north in Sweden, with 3 other companies. We're doing a roll-up, what's called a marketing roll-up. And that way, the Singapore operation will get more funding, we can go and buy more of the companies with shares, and we can actually enhance our offering. And the idea is that we enhance Hong Kong, so that in a year's time we can basically sell the Hong Kong operation to this roll-up in a year's time. But we need to get, obviously, to up the revenues and increase the profits as a result of that. Hence why I'm spending a lot more time in Hong Kong and Shanghai and Beijing, which is what the Hong Kong operation actually covers.
So talk about this a little bit, because normally in the US, you talk about an IPO, you're talking about a company with 2,000 employees and 100 million US in revenue, but you've got 20 employees and you're talking about doing an IPO in Singapore. So
no, we're doing the
how
IPO
does that
in
work?
Sweden. We're doing the IPO in Sweden. Yeah, that's exactly why, because everywhere else in the world, the benchmark is very, very high, whereas the benchmark in Sweden is quite low, but also it's a startup, it's a growth index, it's a tech growth index. It is mirrored with the NASDAQ in the States for a reason. It looks after startups. And I've known lots of clients who actually have got listed on the Swedish First North NASDAQ. And they've actually said it's fantastic because you're out the limelight. They allow you to grow. There's not so much pressure on earning straight away. They allow you to actually boost your revenues, boost your numbers, and actually then you can then change from that stock exchange to, say, the main NASDAQ in the States, or the FTSE, for example, or the SGX, or the Hong Kong index, or the ASX, one of the big indexes, for example. So that way, by rolling up with 3 or 4 other companies, which is what we're doing, it's not just ourselves, there's actually all the employees' revenues from those companies. And the idea is we've got a target list of another 100 companies who we're going to basically buy and actually add to this smaller PLC called the marketing group, and they will hopefully increase the share price by telling a good story about how they're fitting into what we're actually doing as well. So that's where the guys we're working with are very clever in terms of spotting what the Swedish NASDAQ actually does and actually helping young tech startups like ourselves.
That's interesting. Is this something you would recommend for other startups,
Without
or is this kind of a special situation?
No, I think I definitely recommend it because it allows us to basically get funding and get finance in through other ways. Like, for example, in Singapore, it's actually quite hard to get finance as a startup. I've approached several of the banks, including a bank I've been with since I've been in Singapore. Now, I've been in Singapore 7 years, and I asked them for a business loan to help us grow. And they say, well, you have to have 3 years of accounts. I'm going, really? 3 years of accounts. How am I supposed to have 3 years of accounts? I'm 18 months in, I'm starting up, I'm growing, I want to employ people, I want to employ Singaporeans. They pay CPF, they pay tax. I pay corporation tax. I'm helping the Singapore economy grow. It's not doing so well at the moment. It's kind of flatlining. I'm actually giving jobs to Singaporeans. They're paying CPF. And they're saying, you don't want me to do that because I haven't got 3 years of accounts. And we went to about 4 different banks. We finally went to one who let us off with the extra 6 months and said, we normally ask for 2 years. But because we're backed by Spring in Singapore, which is the government initiative in terms of helping small businesses, will allow you to submit 18 months of accounts. So eventually they gave me a loan at a very good rate to allow us to basically grow faster.
Interesting. Yeah, my experience with banks has been that you go to them and you ask for a loan and they say, well, you need to put up the amount of money that the loan is for.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, so I need to have the money in order to get the money. But if I had the money, why would I ask you for the money? And I've had these conversations with banks, and yeah, it's interesting. So, so what are some of the challenges that you've faced starting this business and running it and growing it so far? What are some of the hurdles that you faced? Have there been any major obstacles?
The biggest hurdle, as it is, we're in Hong Kong and in Singapore and places like Shanghai, is talent. You know, it's talent because there's only a finite amount of people. There's lots of restrictions in Singapore in terms of who you can employ, in terms of work passes and so forth. And for every 4 Singaporeans we employ, I can employ 1 expat, for example, 1 foreigner. So we tend to focus on Singaporeans. We tend to invest in Singaporeans. We tend to invest in the training. But we've had to, look at how their writing is, because it's not known for Singlish for nothing. And they do tend to write Singlish as well as actually speak Singlish. So we've had to kind of like iron some of this out to make sure we have good writers and we spot good writers and spot people who actually have a passion for writing as part of our business, but also people who are aware of social media but can learn quickly. So what we found in Singaporeans is that they learn phenomenally quickly. They're very quick to pick things up. They're very eager to keep, they're eager to learn. They're happy to go on courses to learn more things, even if those courses are in the evening or the weekends. So we put them on things like Dale Carnegie leadership courses. We put them on, various different training courses to enhance themselves. So talent is definitely an issue. We employed a few expats, for example, that didn't fit the culture, so they left. And we kind of learned a big lesson and say, okay, let's not employ any expats. Ironically, then actually go down the Singaporean route. So Singapore government should give me a medal, really, because I am actually doing their whole philosophy of Singaporean first, which is their philosophy. But we're doing it because it's the best talent available in Singapore. If you want to get a good culture and get a good team working together, it's actually the best way of actually doing it. What I object to the way the Singapore government does it is they force you to do it, whereas it should be a natural where you compete because they're the best people, not because they're being forced to. You must employ them because of the restrictions. But that's certainly the biggest issue you face in Singapore is the talent. Like how you manage the talent, how you recruit the talent, how you reward the talent, how you train the talent, and making sure that they are the right kind of people and they're very client focused and very, they understand how social media works.
So do you do all your recruiting through LinkedIn?
Of course. It's like somebody the other day called me up and said, I've got a call center. Do you want to use our call center to generate clients for your business? And I said, do you know what we do? If I started using a call center to generate business, what does it say to our clients? It says to our clients that LinkedIn doesn't work. So yeah, we do new business through LinkedIn, we do content marketing through LinkedIn, and we do recruitment through LinkedIn.
So how do you get business through LinkedIn then? What are the tactics that you use to generate your own leads?
A lot of it is social selling. So it's literally putting out blogs, which means that people then view your blogs or comment on your blogs, and then you contact them and you connect with them. And because they've made the first move, they're actually quite receptive to you reaching out and say, hey, do you want to have a chat about LinkedIn? Go, oh, that's interesting, I read your blogs.
And when you say blog, are you talking about the LinkedIn Pulse Network?
Correct.
Or
LinkedIn Pulse Network. So basically you publish on the LinkedIn, which is the biggest publishing platform in the world. And basically by doing that, LinkedIn then market your blog to thousands and millions of other people. And it's absolutely fantastic because they then see that and think, that's interesting content. I'll actually come and see Chris's profile. Oh, that's the business he runs, that's interesting. And the same thing with this whole who's viewed your profile. So if they view your profile, you can then again contact them and say, thanks for viewing my profile. And they then say, would you like to have a chat about LinkedIn? And again, because they made the first move, it's actually not a hard sell, it's a social sell, it's a soft sell. And that's what LinkedIn's all about. It's about relationships. So it's like this, basically like this, but it's virtual. Right. But the whole idea of LinkedIn is you meet people. So I've got meetings lined up this whole week, for example, created by LinkedIn. So I've said, I'm in Hong Kong for a week, I'd like to meet with you. And people go, fantastic, I'll meet with you, Chris. And because you're initiating it through LinkedIn, because they can see your profile, they can see your company, they can check you out before they say yes. That's the difference between that and say cold calling, where you ring somebody up and they're completely unprepared, you know what they're doing, they don't know who you are, and basically they're going to say no. Whereas social selling has a higher proportion of people saying yes because they can see who you are before they say yes.
So do you have any case studies of clients that have used this successfully that you can talk about? To give some other examples?
I mean, everything from, for example, we have financial services clients in Europe who actually were so successful in Europe, we actually brought it into Asia. We do also like 5 countries now in Asia, and they generated clients literally by targeting people through LinkedIn, using emails on LinkedIn, using the data on LinkedIn, with a very discreet, very focused message, having enhanced their company page, having written blogs for all their senior executives, and actually generated business through major banks across Europe, across Germany, across the UK, across Asia, across Australia, purely by LinkedIn. And that's one example. Another example is education brand work for in Singapore. They're looking for franchisees. And so we approach people and you think, how do you target someone who wants franchisees? Well, basically it's an investment. So we target wealthy Singaporeans, for example, in Singapore, who are interested in education and say, would you like to have a franchisee of this particular establishment? Because they've heard of the brand, because they've seen the guy who runs it and they like what he puts out there, they say yes. They say yes, I'm very interested in this investment opportunity. And we know about education in Singapore. You know, it's very lucrative to have education establishment in Singapore. So those two things work together, but it goes across the board. Any B2B company, it works phenomenally well. But even B2C companies, it works from an employer branding point of view. So we have a client in Singapore who are B2C, one of the biggest retailers in the country, and they wanted to actually engage employees. So we actually got the guy in charge to put all his achievements up, because he had loads of achievements which he didn't bother putting on LinkedIn. He didn't basically tell anybody he was this, that and the other, and he'd been knighted by the Queen and so forth. And actually, you know, little things like that. And we basically put blogs out there saying about how his company was about employees first, not consumers first. Because he believed that employees, if they were happy, treated customers right. Whereas you put customers first, then employees actually feel resentful about that, and they want, no, I should be treated first here. And actually we put that out there so that actually he enhanced his capability to employ people in what is a very, very tight labour market. We also found him, for example, partners in other countries like Thailand and Philippines to open up stores over there. So that's another example of the fact it's a global network. And all you have to do is slice and dice all the data on LinkedIn of 400 million people to find the person you want to do business with.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the Singapore startup scene versus Hong Kong. What's it like starting a business in Singapore? And granted, you haven't started a business in Hong Kong, or have you?
Yes, I have, yes. And actually, it's easier to start one in Hong Kong than it was in Singapore.
Okay, so talk a little bit about that.
So we had to basically, so we created the Singapore operation, and when I became PR, it was much easier. If I wasn't PR in Singapore, it's actually, it's not hard, but you have to get either a PR or a citizen to actually help you set the company up. The other way of doing it is to be an entrepreneur, and you have to give them like $1 million.
Right.
Which obviously most of the startups do not have.
Yeah, what entrepreneur actually has money?
Precisely. So I found that kind of like, that was why when I became PR, it was a catalyst for me to actually start the company, because actually there was no barriers left. And I actually offer that service now for people who want to start companies in Singapore. And I actually say, I will be your silent shareholder so you can actually start it. And then basically after you become PR, we actually give you the shares back, and I keep a minority for just doing the service, and I'll help you with your LinkedIn marketing and so forth, but actually it'll help you launch the company, because actually it's quite hard otherwise. And I found that when I had clients in China, they insisted on having a bank in Hong Kong to transfer the money to. So by necessity, I came here one day for like 12 hours, opened up a bank, started a company literally in about 20 minutes. It was actually harder to open an bank account here than it was to start a company.
Yes.
Because the bank account people said, oh, yeah, but I need this document, this document. So I just started a company in 10 minutes. It's like, you're now taking me 3 hours to open a bank account. But actually, so starting a company was no problem at all. I did not need to be PR. I didn't even need an address here.
Yep.
That was the amazing thing. I just started a company. Like, wow, that's incredible. And now this company actually invoices for everybody in Hong Kong, but also everyone in China, and we can actually get the money out without any hassle. And actually, it's easy for the Chinese company or the Hong Kong company to work with. So from that perspective, actually easier to start a company in Hong Kong than it is in Singapore.
Ah, that's interesting. What are some other comparisons between Singapore and Hong Kong and
I think
the startup
the funding thing was interesting. Like, for example, there's lots of events on here as there is in Singapore. There's massive amounts of rivalry between Hong Kong and Singapore about who is the best startup arena. And obviously, Singapore government puts a lot of money behind startups, and there's lots of entrepreneurs in Singapore. But the trouble is, lots of entrepreneurs in Singapore means there's someone in their mother's bedroom with an app. And it's like they're not a CEO, but they come up on LinkedIn as being a CEO of their own company. But when you get down to it, their address is their mother's bedroom, and they're like 19 years old. It's probably them. Maybe you will become the next Mark Zuckerberg, but I don't think so. Yeah, they're not taking the risk because they're still in their mother's bedroom. Whereas I get the feel that Hong Kong is a bit kind of like a bit more risky like that. It's a bit like in London in many respects. You get moved to London, you start a business, you have no fallback. You don't live with your parents. You really do have to make it work to get a living, and you share your house. For example, you share rooms. And obviously it's expensive in Hong Kong. It's the most expensive place in the world, apparently, according to the South Morning China Post I saw this morning, in terms of property. And Singapore and London must be kind of second and third to that. So that has something to do with the fact that you are taking a big risk by actually starting a company. But I get the feeling that Singapore likes to try and find any particular way whatsoever to try and create their own Silicon Valley in Singapore, and they haven't really succeeded so far. Whereas Hong Kong seems to have more success stories, and they seem to have kind of more initiatives, and it seems to be easier to get grants and so forth here than it does in Singapore. I mean, maybe you can throw some light on that.
But it is warmer in Singapore. That they've got that
It's
for
easier
sure.
to do business.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So let's dive into some other LinkedIn stuff, because I think some people came here wanting some specific LinkedIn advice, and you're the expert on LinkedIn. By the way, how many LinkedIn connections do you have?
Only 43,000.
Yeah, only 43,000.
It's only the most viewed profile in Asia Pacific, but I've got a long way to go. There's people in America who've got 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100,000, so I've got a long way to go.
So how did you build all those up? I mean, did you just sit there like clicking on
No.
all those suggestions and just going down every suggestion and just like, I'm going to add every one of these people? How did you build up that network?
No, I actually started by personalizing it, because I do passionately believe in personalizing it. So what I tend to do is, like, when I went to an event yesterday, for example, picked lots of business cards up, and then when I got back to the hotel, I actually wrote them an invitation saying, I met you at this event today. I'd really like to connect with you to see and share your posts. And when people view my posts on LinkedIn, for example, I say, thanks for viewing my post, I'd like to read and see your posts. So I do try and personalize invitations if at all possible. And that way you actually increase the success factor of people saying yes. It also helps to have an enhanced profile as well. People think you've got an amazing profile. They do want to follow you because there's benefits to having access to my 43,000 connections. So there's access there because obviously LinkedIn's based on the fact you have more second connections and more third connections. And to do that, you need to have more first connections. To do that, you need to tie up with people who have a lot of first connections.
Yep.
Which is why it's attractive to actually tie up with people like headhunters, because headhunters have a lot of connections, so you can access their database. They think they're doing you a favor. They think you're doing them a favor, but actually they're doing you a favor because you're getting access to their connections as part of a quid pro quo. So that's, personalizing invitations is absolutely key, but also having an active profile, having a top viewed profile. When in terms of using things like key search and keyword search on LinkedIn, because that comes up on LinkedIn as it does on Google as well. So it's very important to have a completely full profile.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes, or like top 5, top 10 mistakes that you see people make with their LinkedIn profiles?
Well, obviously the first
You've
one
got to have some fun
First
ones.
one's a photograph.
Yeah.
The first one is people using a photograph it should be a Facebook photograph. It's one of those ones. The classic one, which I use all the time, of a guy in Hong Kong actually, who's dressed as a panda. He's dressed as a panda with a microphone in a nightclub. Obviously completely hammered, thought it was a great idea to do a picture of this and to upload it onto his LinkedIn. You can just imagine him the next day going, I'm sure I did something really weird last night. Let's have a look at my LinkedIn. Oh my God, what have I done? Now everyone thinks I'm completely, I'm at a KTV bar, I've been drinking, I'm dressed as a panda, and what kind of impression does that give? So your picture is the most important thing. And then it's things like your summary section. Having a full summary section, talking about your brand, talking about your personal brand, your achievements, your awards, those kind of areas. Having an up-to-date content marketing plan, so you're actually sharing relevant content. Having a company page, which is up-to-date and actually is on LinkedIn and is, has lots of content. I show people all the time, if you do a Google search on your company page, it comes up second or third on Google.
Yeah.
People are amazed. Sometimes it even beats the website. They go, oh my God, I spend millions of dollars on my website and LinkedIn's page is coming up first. Same if I Google your names on Google, your LinkedIn profile comes up number 1. So if you have a terrible profile, you're a terrible company page, or the last update, say 6 months ago, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yep. So really, it sounds like the biggest mistake is not using all of LinkedIn's features and not filling stuff out.
Because people get the wrong impression, like not updating your experience. There's nothing worse than you go to someone's profile and they haven't updated their experience and moved on jobs and it's not updated to what they're actually doing. It doesn't help them. It also doesn't help anyone who actually looks at their profile.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've done searches for potential employees and I find a LinkedIn profile and I think this guy looks halfway perfect, but his profile's only half filled out. It's not up to date. And I think this guy doesn't realize that people are looking at his profile, thinking about hiring him, and he hasn't filled it all out.
Correct.
And it would take him 10 minutes. And he could do it.
And even people who, for example, want a job change, but they haven't put on, seeking new opportunities or looking for new adventure or whatever it happens to be. It's like, well, how do you expect people to actually know you're looking for a job change if you don't tell them? They're not mind readers. They're going through your profile going, well, I've no idea whether he wants a job change or not. Whereas if you do a search on, say, intern or looking for new opportunities or looking for a change, you'll actually come up with a string of people who actually realize that keyword search actually works incredibly well.
Let's talk a little bit more about the LinkedIn Pulse Network, because this is something new that LinkedIn introduced not too long ago, and it's really taken off in a huge way. And a lot of people have still never really heard of it. I mean, they might see a blog post on LinkedIn, but they don't really know this network. So explain this network to us and how it
So
can be used.
they basically bought the Pulse a couple of years ago, and they actually attached the Pulse to LinkedIn, so you can actually now publish on the Pulse itself. And the Pulse actually then promotes your content to everybody else on LinkedIn through a news feed, but also things like emails and actually distributing it, and also gives you lots of stats, lots of data, so you can see exactly who actually looks at your blogs. And you can actually look at every single person who's liked it and commented on it, which means that you can do things which you can't do if it's on just your website. Because on your website, then you basically don't know who's actually viewed your profile and who's actually viewed your blogs. Whereas on LinkedIn you can, because obviously everyone's put that data into their profiles. So when you look at something else, that data then follows you around. So that's the most amazing thing when it comes to the data analytics on LinkedIn are connected to the Pulse itself. But you need to publish to get that benefit. If you don't publish, you don't get the benefit of people actually viewing your blog post itself. So it's a very, very simple way of actually publishing. It beats doing things like WordPress and then having to promote that, for example, or promoting it on your website. Actually, you do this on LinkedIn, everybody then sees it. LinkedIn actually market it for you.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you publish to the Pulse Network, anybody who's following you sees that, but also all of your connections see it as well.
Yeah.
So the more connections you have, the more of an audience you have
for
anything you publish on Pulse.
Totally,
So if you publish on Pulse, you get 43,000 people looking at it. I get my slightly lesser number looking at that, right?
That's the theory, yes.
So what are some of the success stories you've seen come from publishing on LinkedIn Pulse? Are there any standout examples?
I read about success stories all the time. I mean, for example, one of my first employee actually published an amazing post on Friday, and it went completely viral. She got 20,000 views for this particular post because she was very provocative, and she actually taken a leaf out of my book and actually wrote how Singapore companies should not employ Singaporeans first. They should employ the best person first, and she's Singaporean. If I'd written it, I'd be out the country by now. I'd be escorted to the airport and I'd be out the country. Because she's Singaporean, she actually got this really juxtaposition of views coming back where Singaporeans were having to go at her, saying, what do you mean? Why are you having to go at Singaporean first policy? And all the expats were like me, were going, yes, it's about time someone who was Singaporean actually said this kind of thing. And she's in the middle going, I'm sure this is supposed to be the other way around. But it's amazing. But I told her she had to now answer every single post. Every single comment. She said, bloody hell, I haven't done anything else for 3 days, Chris. Literally, I spent Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and I got a text from her on Sunday night going, I've answered like 400 comments on this particular post. It's like, how on earth do you do this on a daily basis? It's like, well, this is why people employ someone like ourselves, and we do it for people. Because actually it can take quite a lot of time. But if someone has actually taken the time to write a comment about your blog post or answer you or comment either pro or against, you have to then acknowledge them. You have to say thanks for this, and by the way, I disagree, this is why, or I agree with you, but this is why. And because people are more civil on LinkedIn, because they represent their company and their personal brand, they're not abusive. It's not like Twitter, or it's not like Facebook, it's not like things like Mumbrella or that kind of thing, where you can be anonymous. This is actually a place where people actually represent their company and their personal brand, so they think about the comments they actually put down. So you have to actually pay them the respect to actually answer back and say what their comment was and why you liked their comment or didn't, and actually keep the conversation going. But she had it amazing, and she will benefit amazingly as a result of that. She get more views, and her profile get more views, and she's just changed jobs that will help her new job and her new company, for example.
Okay, so some of the tips I've gotten tonight are, if you have a LinkedIn, you should have a LinkedIn profile. You should fill the whole thing out.
Indeed.
You need to publish on the LinkedIn Pulse Network. You need to engage with a lot of people, or the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
It's gamification.
Right.
LinkedIn's very much gamification. The more you do on LinkedIn, the more you get out of it. The more you put into it, the more that your rankings will raise. The less you do, the more your rankings will basically plummet. So you have to do it on a daily basis. It gets very addictive, but it helps you have an app, have the mobile. Because if you're on you've got 10 minutes spare, you're waiting for somebody, the MTR or the MRT, for example, you can actually then just go on the app and just basically comment or like or share or connect. So it's gamification. The more you put into it, like any good relationship, and LinkedIn's all about relationships, the more you put into it, the more you do get out of it.
So are there any other big tips other than those that you would give for LinkedIn?
Share. Share and comment. Share original and unique content. So share stuff that other people aren't necessarily going to see. Interesting stories, and not just about your own company. No one wants to hear about your company at the same time. So we don't just talk about black marketing all the time. Occasionally we do. And mostly it's about employer branding. It's talking about how we've gone out for a big night out, for example, and how the team actually responded to that. And we talk about LinkedIn quite a lot, but actually we talk a lot about Asia and technology and innovation and leadership leadership and fintech and being an entrepreneur and all these other things, content marketing, for example, more than we talk about, say, LinkedIn or black marketing. And that way we bring people into our profiles and our company, and then they get used to us, and then when they actually find out what we do, they're much more likely to take up our services and engage with us, that we just pummel them with our black marketing services every single day. So that's the quid pro quo, is it's a content sharing platform, just like a networking event like this. You don't just purely talk about your own company at a networking event, and neither should you do that on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Let's give Chris a round of applause.